Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 1. Now let's start the fanfic. Naruto Uzumaki. If you asked who that boy was, the answer would vary greatly. If you asked someone from out of Konoha, the answer would be, unsurprisingly, that they had no idea and probably didn't give a damn. Now, if you asked inside Konoha, the answers would get interesting. The ninja would say he was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, the civilians that he was the demon brat. Most called him a troublemaker, some the fox reborn. But there was one thing, one name on which they all agreed, pervert. Naruto Uzumaki was the alpha pervert of the Leaf, his perviness dwarfing that of Jiraiya himself at his age. Of course, he didn't become a pervert just like that. In fact, he became one after seeing a couple making love, and began to associate with love, thus if he had, he would have love. As he grew up, he realized he was wrong, but being a pervert was fun, so why stop? But Naruto also wanted to become a ninja, and while he wasn't stupid, he wasn't at his brightest when he was despaired, and thus Mizuki had tricked him. But with his hope returning, so did his smarts. I am so dumb, of course it's not a secondary test, it's a freakin' trap. Damn it. My only hope is to make everyone believe I knew since the start and wanted to trap Mizuki. Maybe if I can capture him I'll be made a ninja, if so I hope to be on Boob-chan's team. Naruto drooled slightly before shaking it off and beginning to work. He quickly learned the shadow clone technique and then used the newly acquired clones to prepare the battlefield. However, one Iruka Yumino found him, or rather one of his clones. Before the scarred instructor could speak, the clone held its hand up. No time to talk, please take position in the sidelines, I'm trying to capture a traitor. The clone led a surprised Iruka to a vantage point where he could see Naruto, casually leaning against a small shack. Iruka looked at the one next to him only to see the blonde wave at him and puff away. That shocked Iruka. Naruto on his part was surprised to see that he received his clone's memory, and filed the information for later. Soon enough, Mizuki arrived, a smirk on his face. Congratulations Naruto, you did it. Now, give me the scroll. Weren't you supposed to see if I have mastered a technique of the scroll? Mizuki's smirk turned malevolent. Do you really believe, you idiot, that you could master a cage-level technique? Now be a good demon, give the scroll, and I'll let you go alive, though you'll have to find another village. Konoha is a bit miffed by your theft. Naruto stuck an exaggerated thinking pause, rubbing his chin. You. Hails of shuriken and kunai suddenly appeared, all aimed at Mizuki, who did his best to block them all, and he did a good job at that, even slashing open the net that was supposed to trap him from above. Iruka dashed from his hiding spot, taking position in front of Naruto with a kunai in each hand. Naruto, retreat with the scroll, I'll take care of that traitor. What makes you think I'm done? Iruka, confused, turned his gaze, only to see Naruto pull lightly on a string. The result had the academy teacher's jaw reach the floor. Hidden explosive tags exploded all around Mizuki, blinding and deafening him, as kunai linked with wire flew from the trees, trapping Mizuki. When the dust settled, Mizuki was tightly tied up. Seething in rage, Mizuki glared at the two while Iruka slowly nodded his head, impressed. However, a rustle in the bushes caught everyone's attention. From the undergrowth, a brown creature emerged. It looked like a goblin or imp, its grotesque face distorted in an expression of wonderment. It looked at Naruto for a moment then screamed, "Master!" It ran across the clearing, showing the small club in its hand, an expression of stupid joy on its face before reaching Naruto and bowing repeatedly while chanting happily the word, "Master," for whatever reason it had. Naruto blinked 3 times. That's even more shocking than finding out Kyuubi's in my guts. Mizuki and Iruka whipped their heads toward Naruto, even more shocked. Then they whipped it towards the sound of someone landing, namely the Hokage. Naruto-kun, how long have you known? I met the fox earlier this year. He's a complete, said Naruto, still studying the bowing creature. Then, the creature suddenly raised its head, and turned to the undergrowth. Then, it jumped to its feet and began jumping in place, screaming repeatedly, "Master!" as if calling onto someone or something that was in the forest. Soon, other little brown creatures emerged from the wood and joined the first in their adoration of Naruto. Interestingly, some had found things of use in the forest. A few had found kunai, rusty or not, and used them as weapons. One had even found an old tanto. Two had rabbit skins as hats, and, surprisingly, the last one arrived had white hair with a small ponytail at the back, glasses and a headband with a music note, though he looked just as stupid as the others. Grumbling was heard from the undergrowth, and a gray and old-looking creature emerged. It was draped in a rags, had metal pauldrons and a wooden stick strapped to his back with a glowing stone hanging from the stick above his head. Damn Browns, leaving an old minion to fend for itself in a hostile forest, and damn that fox, its chakra and all the interferences it created. Stench. What happened with that white-haired idiot? A green, and quite true to its name, creature fell from the trees, looking at the gray one and jumping a bit excitedly. Dead. Dead. Wanted capture us. And kill Overlord. So killed idiot. Good. Good. Oh, I see the Browns were useful in the end. The Overlord has been found. Naruto pointed a finger at himself, a bit surprised. Yes. Yes, young man. You are the new Overlord. I am Gnarl, master of the minions. My smelly friend here is Stench, master assassin of the Overlord, and these pitiful things dancing around you are the Browns. What they lack in brain, they make up in resilience and strength. Please follow us so that you may explore your castle in Uzu. It is a bit in ruin, but it can be rebuilt fairly quickly. Sure, but I'm kinda taken right now. Can it wait a bit? Most certainly. Oh, heir of the Uzumaki clan. Okay. Old man, there's a lot to explain, I believe. The Hokage nodded, and then snapped his fingers. A squad of Anbu appeared, and immediately the brown minions gathered around Naruto in a defensive formation, snarling at the masked ninja. Naruto, trying something, ordered them to stand down, and they did. Hiruzen returned his attention to the wary Anbu. Take this traitor to Ibiki for questioning. The Anbu took Mizuki and disappeared. Then Hiruzen turned to Naruto and, Gnarl. I think it would be good if you came to my office, there is some explaining to do. Iruka, you're coming too. They followed the Hokage toward the village, Naruto ignoring completely the shocked and or hateful looks sent his way, the minions blissfully and stupidly following him. The hunt was called off. Hiruzen revealed that Naruto had helped catch a traitor and thus earned his rank as a genin, giving the blonde his headband in front of a good quarter of the ninja currently in the village. Looking at the crowd of brown thingies standing behind Naruto, he wasn't so sure he wanted them in his office. Naruto, do you believe you could send these things back to where they came from? I'd like to keep my office organized. Naruto looked at Gnarl for help, and the old minion pointed the park near the Hokage Tower. We can summon a portal to the tower in this park, from there you should be able to send the minions back. Naruto nodded and went to the park. Going to a part of the park with a lot of space and relatively small traffic during the day, he looked at Gnarl expectantly. One moment, my lord. Fishing in his rags, Gnarl took a small light blue stone out. Giblet. Do you hear me? A small silence, then a stupid and excited voice answered. Giblet here. Yes. What can Giblet do? Prepare a portal, and send it to this stone, and be quick. After a moment, the stone turned yellow, and Gnarl threw it at the open space. As soon as the stone reached the ground, it exploded in light and smoke. When they could look safely again, they saw a small open building. It was square, with a thick column at each corner supporting a traditional Japanese-style roof. There were no walls, and on the floor in the middle of the building was a vast array of runes. 4 torii gates also stood near the building, one in front of each of the entrances. Naruto motioned for the brown minions to go to the portal, and they quickly did it before disappearing in a flash of red. This done, the Hokage led them to his office and demanded a report. Naruto, not wanting to insult the Hokage, that would be stupid, told the whole truth, including the fact he had been deceived. Once done, they turned to Gnarl. Now, could you please explain why you are present? Most certainly. As a minion I, along with the others, am part of the Uzumaki properties. We would have gotten to our overlord sooner, but that blasted fox expelled so much chakra that it shut off the tower heart until now. We would have been there during the attack, but the boy's mother rejected the title of overlady. A small silence ensued, before Sarutobi asked another question. What do you mean you are part of the Uzumaki properties? We were given to his line by the sage of Six Path and have remained in their possession since then. A gigantic smile came upon Naruto's face while Iruka and Sarutobi had their eyes grow the size of platters. Excuse me. Yes, the sage had 3 children. To his oldest son, he gave his eyes, and the brat fathered the Uchiha clan. To his youngest son, he gave his body, and the little prick gave birth to the Senju clan. But to his 3rd child, his daughter, the one that was forgotten, he gave his greatest tool, as the minions. Under the Rakudo, we defeated a god. The Jubi. He was the first overlord, and from his daughter's line, the Uzumaki, countless overlords and overladies have arisen. Though, for reasons I can't fathom, none decided to conquer the world. So let me get this straight, said Naruto. I'm a descendant of the fabled Rakudo Sennin. I have at my disposal a potential army that kicked the of a thingy even more powerful than the Kyuubi, and I have a castle somewhere. Yes. Awesome. What are the fine prints? Well, as the new overlord, you'll have to restore the castle. It is currently in a state of disrepair that is quite worrying. Then, both as the last known Uzumaki and as the overlord, you will have to find mistresses too. Woovoa, wait a minute. You mean polygamy is a requirement for the job? Yes, it has been so for generations, it is the traditions of your clan, said Gnarl with a slight frown, wondering if the boy would reject such an important tradition. To his relief, Naruto smiled the biggest possible smile and had stars in his eyes. Best job ever. Where do I sign? Hyuga Hiyashi sighed tiredly. His eldest daughter kept disappointing him. It was so long since she had last progressed in the Juken, and her Byakugan hadn't evolved in a long time. It was depressing. Where did I fail? But Hiyashi knew that the fault didn't lay in him. Or maybe it did, she was so much like him. The Hyuga were renowned throughout the country for their Byakugan, an eye of great power. The Byakugan, while activated, allowed the bearer to see all around him, and discern the chakra pathways and chakra points, and no matter if it was activated or not, it allowed for extreme clarity of sight, giving every living Hyuga a 30 in each eye. Such perfect sight allowed them to see things in a way only a Hyuga could. It had side effects. Because of their perfect sight, the Hyuga had developed an imagination that was beyond realistic, and because of the capacity of the Byakugan to see through objects when activated, they had ended up picking up some tendencies. To put it bluntly, the Hyuga were a clan of glorified perverts. And just like their mind had reacted to their eyes had reacted to their minds. Now, to unlock the different stages of the Byakugan, you needed to indulge in carnal pleasure. The naughtier the act, the stronger your Byakugan got. If the civilians knew exactly the extent of the acts of depravity that took place behind the walls of the Hyuga, who knows how they'd react. But as Hiashi always believed, it was better to get stronger through than through sorrow like the Uchiha. Thinking back on this brought back many fond memories of his wife, his brother and sister-in-law. Many times they had indulged in earthly pleasures, and a healthy doubt remained over whose children Neji and Hinata were. Exactly the two who were causing him a world of trouble. Hinata was a sweet child, something Hiashi had nothing against, but she had a romantic streak. She was smitten with the Uzumaki boy and refused to go farther than masturbating. It wouldn't be so bad, if she at least went to the boy, but she was hell-bent on being submissive to him in every way, and so far the Uzumaki had only groped her. It was quite disheartening, really. The boy was a fine lad, with a healthy interest in the opposite, and his general behavior would make him welcome in the Hyuga clan, but he hadn't gone any farther than groping Hinata, something that left the clan head at a loss of words. Hiashi knew that his daughter, because of her lack of talent with the gentle fist, needed to become ally active sooner in order to become stronger and increase her chances of survival, but she stubbornly refused. And then, Hiashi had made the mistake of entrusting that Kurenai woman with a part of Hinata's education, hoping she could bring something to the girl that he could not, but he had discovered too late that the woman was a rabid anti-pervert, and feared that she would influence Hinata in some way. With a bit of luck, her team would surprise her masturbating and it would escalate into a threesome, a father could hope. Then there was Neji. In their fighting style, he was a prodigy without a doubt, but when it came to his behavior, he was a major problem. He had a deep-seated hatred of the main house, something Hiashi could understand, but he also was almost owl. He kept unlocking new levels of power without partaking in any UAL activity, and it worried Hiashi to no end. He feared the boy would consider himself superior to the other Hyuga, causing his already inflated ego to grow even more. He also feared for Hinata's life should the two of them ever fight. Neji had, during spars, tried to maim Hinata at several occasions, something that had led Hiashi to forbid any spar between the two. Yes, if he had to give an opinion, Hiashi would without hesitation say that Neji was the biggest problem. With yet another sigh, Hiashi went to deal with the irritable elders. They had become insufferable since they couldn't get laid anymore. Hinata was depressed. Just the day before yesterday, her crush, her beloved Naruto, had failed the Genin exam, again. And she had passed. Now, she couldn't enjoy his wonderful company anymore, nor could she feel his incredible hands as they hungrily explored her nubile and vulnerable body. She sighed, getting her libido under control. Today, the graduates would pass some kind of test. Iruka had said it would help determine the teams, but she felt absolutely no interest whatsoever in this mess. She had come early, very much so, like a lot of her former classmates, but she completely ignored them. She needed air and tranquility, thus she went for the roof. "Hey Hinata-chan," said Kiba, walking beside her. "You seem down, want me to cheer you up?" he said with a slightly perverted, but mostly bright smile. Kiba had boasted he'd lose his virginity before hitting 16, and since he had seen Hinata being groped by Naruto so many times, he believed her to be an easy girl. Sadly for him, his comment had just reminded Hinata of what she couldn't enjoy anymore, putting her in a very sour mood. She stopped. Her left eye twitched 3 times, then she grabbed Kiba's head and slammed it into a nearby tree with enough force to embed his face into the bark. She stalked away from the unconscious boy playing at being a nail and resumed her walk toward the entrance of the academy, ignoring the wary looks sent her way. She was almost at the door when another annoyance made itself known. Sasuke Uchiha had seen the scene with Kiba, and was slightly impressed with the girl's strength, thus he decided to make her happy. The way you dealt with Kiba was impressive. You will eat lunch with me, said the Avenger, causing all the girls to gasp in horror. Hinata turned to Sasuke, a full-blown snarl on her face. Then, she grabbed the Uchiha's head and slammed it into the closet's surface, which so happened to be a wall, and soon Kiba had a nailing buddy, except that Sasuke was slumped against the wall of the academy, only stopped from falling by the fact his face was buried in said wall. Of course, this attack caused Sasuke's fangirls to rush at Hinata, both to help their crush who was still near the irked Hyuga, and to pummel the heretic that dared hurt the divine gift to mankind that was Uchiha Sasuke. Just writing that makes me want to puke. They quickly decided that only getting Sasuke out of the wall was safer when they received a smoldering glare from the Hyuga. Hinata finally reached the inside of the building, and began stalking the empty corridors, looking longingly at certain spots. Naruto had trapped her in this closet and groped her for a good 5 minutes before Iruka opened it. In this classroom he had squeezed her and he had cupped her crotch after pining her against this wall. With a sigh, she recalled many such instances. Sure, she wasn't the only girl he had groped. Ino, for instance, had also been one of his targets, but he always came back to her. What she couldn't understand was why he never went farther. Cammy knew she had never fought back. Another sigh made its way past her lips. Then, she felt a hand on her rear. The only person allowed to grope her hadn't passed, and thus couldn't be there. After dealing with Sasuke and Kiba, she was calmer, but she was still pissed. With a growl she addressed the fool who had dared touch her. You have 5 seconds to remove your hand from my butt and hightail it out of here before I rip your hand off and shove it up your. Naruto yawned and stretched in his new room. After the meeting with the Hokage, he had followed Gnarl through the portal. His new castle wasn't in a very good state, but it didn't really matter. He had sent groups of minions to gather resources. Soon enough, the old castle of the Uzumaki would be rebuilt. He jumped out of his emperor-size bed, because king-size bed was too small to describe that thing, onto the stone floor. He had been happily surprised that the floor wasn't cold last night, and Gnarl had explained that his ancestors had littered the castle with seals designed to ensure his comfort, something he appreciated very much. He had spent yesterday looking around the place and determining priorities. The first thing he had seen was that he didn't have a lot of minions left, barely 100. Gnarl had explained that the invaders who destroyed Whirlpool had taken the hives of the blue, yellow, green and red minions, and most of the surviving minions had scattered around the world in hope of finding the next overlord. Now, he only had 1 blue, Mortis, a sinister guy, 1 green, Stench, and a few browns. So, for now, he had to compensate with them. His first act had been to find a steady source of life force to create more minions. Luckily, such a source had quickly presented itself. The invasion had opened the earth, revealing a network of caves running far beneath the island. In these caves, blind animals were common, and he had found a few interesting amphibians and arthropods, not too resilient, but with amazing vitality. The adults had quickly been slaughtered and their life force harvested, while the youngs and the eggs were gathered to set up a kind of farm. He had managed to secure 5 big caves and had blocked the entrances with rubbles. He wasn't ready yet to begin exploring the cave network, not until his army was bigger. With the harvested life force, he had managed to create 50 more minions. He had sent 20 to establish a mushroom farm to feed his new cattle and 10 others to guard said cattle while the last 20 began clearing the 3 caverns that weren't used. With his 100 minions of the start, he returned to the surface and began looking over his lands. His castle needed wood and stone. 20 minions were set to wood chopping, while he took the rest to look for a quarry. Quickly, he found Whirlpool's old quarry and took control of it after making short work of a pack of wolves that had settled there. Since he didn't have that many minions, he did the work himself with his clones. 30 wolf pelt wearing browns were allocated to the quarry to extract the stone and 10 more to bring it to the castle. Finally, he set 20 brown as a rebuilding team for the castle, keeping the last 20 as a strike force. Then, he had returned to the castle and instructed Giblet to make a few tools for the minions to use to speed up the process. One thing he appreciated with the brown was that they were sturdy and strong. The fact that, once they had learned a task, they became incompetent for any other task didn't bother him in the slightest. During lunch, he began to think of who he'd take as his mistresses. First, of course, was his Boob Chan, always eager to let herself get groped, and now that they were genin, and thus considered adults, as long as she didn't complain, he could do whatever he wanted to her without the civilians raising a fuss about their morality crap. Eno, he didn't know, she was a bit too much on the rebel side and he couldn't really break her without consequences, something he'd rather avoid. Sakura was an absolute no, she was annoying, loud, and flat as a brick. That alone was quite enough to convince Naruto that he wanted nothing to do with the Pinkett, but the fact was said girl was also a rabid anti-pervert and didn't hesitate to hit him. All in all, she was his bane. After lunch, he had explored his castle. First, he had inspected the armory, picking up some armor and a weapon and meeting Giblet. That brown loved bashing way too much. He had then explored the underground part of the castle, and found the life force stock. It was quite pathetic. There was barely a faint green glow from the few poisonous creatures they had killed in the caves. It was luck that his clan library was still intact though, and he had now a lot of reading to do. Additionally, he had picked up a particular scroll that would prove most useful. A little in-depth inspection of the lands surrounding his castle had revealed that an old village was nearby, something that would prove useful in the end. What kind of overlord would he be without at least one village worshipping him? Then, he went to bed, had a good little wet dream of what he'd do to Boob Chan as soon as he got her there, and woke up on this sunny day. He washed up quickly and put on his signature orange jacket. He liked the color, but the jacket was a bit too neon for his taste. Too bad he couldn't buy anything else. Happily, his armor was a nice burnt orange, and he had found a kimono of the same color. He just put this jacket back on to avoid raising suspicions until his sense of drama could give him the most impressive entrance. He then went to the portal and zapped back to Konoha. Today was some kind of evaluation to determine what team they would be on. Just the fact that this was necessary showed how shitty the academy was. When he reached the academy, he saw Kiba with his face buried in the trunk of a tree and a gathering around an unconscious Sasuke. Interestingly, there was an impression of Sasuke's face in the wall near the door to the academy. When he came closer to the mob of fangirls, he heard them cursing the white-eyed freak for what she did. Quickly going past the urge to destroy them for daring to insult his Boob Chan, he felt a surge of pride at what his girl had done. For you see, Naruto loved Hinata. In a twisted and massively perverted way, but he still loved her, and while he wouldn't deny that her chest had played a role in the birth of this love, it certainly wasn't the only reason he loved her. Making his way into the academy, he began to hunt his favorite groping target, and quickly located her as she apparently aimlessly walked the corridors. With a grin, he closed in on her and grabbed her. He was quite surprised when she actually growled at him. You have 5 seconds to remove your hand from my butt and hightail it out of here before I rip your hand off and shove it up your. Now that wouldn't do. He finally had the means and the legal opportunity to make her his. He wouldn't be denied. He may be a pervert, but he still had a heart, and he refused to let her break it. She would be his, no matter if she liked it or not. Though he honestly hoped she'd like it and prayed she just hadn't recognized him. Turning her around, he pushed her against a wall, pining both her hands above her head with one of his arms. Her burning glare immediately melted when it met his blue eyes, and he felt relief. Naruto-kun. She looked at his forehead and her eyes widened. Why you passed? He could feel some joy in her voice, and it pleased him. She'd like this as much as him, and he was happy with this. Yeah, I passed. But you've been a bad girl. What's up with you threatening me? He said with annoyance in his voice. He saw panic enter her eyes and felt actually a bit bad, but he had to play his part before going to the pleasurable part. I'm sorry. I thought it was someone else. Oh, so when it's me, it's no problem if you get groped. Said Naruto with a lecherous smile. You naughty girl, I guess I'll have to. Naruto placed his free hand on the zipper of her jacket and began to pull it as he murmured in her ear. Punish you. Hinata shivered. Looking at her face, he saw a stark contrast between her eyes and expression. Her eyes were blazing with lust and glee, but her face was that of a panicked and shy maiden. She was playing along. Excellent. Naruto K-kun. What are you going to do to me? She squeaked weakly. Naruto answered with one of his most perverted smile and by placing his left leg between hers and rubbing slightly, enjoying the expression of pleasure and desire that appeared on Hinata's face. With her jacket opened, he reached for her shirt and pulled it up, letting it rest above her s. He was satisfied to see that her bra had its clip on the front. It would be simpler. When Naruto unhooked her bra, setting her chest free, Hinata's mind began swimming. She had never felt his hands on her skin before. She was giddy with anticipation and excitement. She blessed the one who invented the Hyuga panties and their ability to eliminate love juice while remaining comfortable. It was the only thing keeping her pants dry right now. She began to utter a weak protest, going back to her role, but Naruto forcibly kissing her interrupted her. It was rough, almost violent, but it was their first kiss and Hinata enjoyed it thoroughly, kissing back passionately. Naruto began kneading her left, causing Hinata to moan in the kiss. His hands felt like fire on her skin, sending wave after wave of pleasure coursing through her as he stimulated her. Hinata shuddered in delight, hoping he would go even farther. Naruto was getting more and more excited. Her lips tasted delicious and her was so soft and enticing. The way she rubbed herself on his thigh was exciting him to no end and her moans only spurred him on. Though the absence of wetness was surprising him. Deciding to investigate, his hand left her and traveled down her body, quickly snaking into her pant and panties, finding there a most satisfying wetness. Sliding a finger inside of her, he enjoyed the way she gasped into the kiss, and felt absolutely delighted when she began to pump herself on his finger as her tongue became frantic in his mouth. Originally, that was as far as he planned to go, but she had excited him too much. She had brought it upon herself, right? Getting his hand out of her pants, he brought it to his face after breaking the kiss, leaving Hinata quivering in need and arousal. Looking at her right in the eyes with an expression of absolute lust, he slowly and sensually licked his finger, causing Hinata to release a throaty moan. Before she could react, he turned her around and pressed her upper body against the wall, her back at a 45 degrees angle. Caressing her shapely rear lovingly, he began pulling her pants and panties down, causing Hinata to gasp again. The Hyuga heiress couldn't believe it. Was he really going to do her right here right now? She had nothing against the idea, but it could be a problem for the test later, though, if it was Naruto, it would be worth it. She heard a zipper being pulled down, and looking behind her, saw that Naruto had let his pants fall to his ankles and that his jacket was open, giving her a delicious view of his poor shirt, struggling to keep his rippling muscles concealed. She licked her lips hungrily, her character of a shy and fair maiden completely forgotten. Naruto pressed the top of his against her, and Hinata understood what he wanted, some good real fun, but without risk of putting her career on the line. It made her love him even more. Close your legs, ordered Naruto lustily, and Hinata eagerly complied. Naruto moaned. His was caressed by the velvety skin of her inner thigh while the upper part was massaged by her outer lips. As far as he was concerned, this was the antechamber of paradise, but not paradise itself yet. He had yet to enter her. Getting a firm grip on her hips, Naruto began thrusting his hips, initiating the double masturbation and causing both teens to moan in delight. Ah, and Naruto-kun, ah, we might, someone might find us. Hinata managed to say through the excitement and pleasure. It wasn't a call to stop, far from that, more like a way to increase their shared arousal by teasing the exhibitionist in both of them. Naruto felt proud, knowing that her stutter had nothing to do with the weak persona she would often put up. This time it was fully because of his actions. Then let's finish this quick, said Naruto, picking up his pace. The sudden increase in speed caused Hinata to moan loudly. Ooh, yeah, this is life, moaned Naruto with one of his biggest smiles ever plastered on his face. Hinata decided to try something, and began to tense and untense her thigh regularly, increasing the stimulation Naruto felt without giving him the occasion to adapt to any rhythm. Ooh, Hina-chan, I'll get you for that, moaned Naruto. Hinata looked above her shoulder, catching Naruto's eyes, and sensually licked her lips. Naruto smiled lustfully and picked up his pace again, quickly sending them both over the edge, covering his throbbing manhood with her juice and staining the wall with his cum. Panting, they took a moment to catch their breath before Naruto slid his out of its meaty sheath, causing Hinata to let out a drawn-out moan. Hina-chan, you naughty girl, look at how dirty you've made me, said Naruto teasingly. He was a bit surprised when Hinata turned to face him and pressed herself against him. I'm sorry Naru-kun, I'll clean you up, she whispered in his ear in a tone of voice before kissing him gently. Shivers of delight ran down Naruto's spine. Hinata, still pressed against him, let her hand caress his chest as she lowered herself. Once she was faced with Naruto's hardened member, she smiled softly and pecked it, causing Naruto to shiver yet again. Then, without hesitating, she took it in her mouth, the warm and wet feeling of it causing Naruto to groan throatily as his eyes rolled back. Hinata then cupped one of her and inserted 2 fingers in her womanhood and, as she edged Naruto off, played with herself. Naruto moaned, both at the sensation and at the show. The aroused blonde placed his hand on top of Hinata's head, massaging her scalp and guiding her along his shaft, moaning blissfully all along. Hinata was also having a great time. Seeing Naruto's pleasured face excited her all the more, and the stimulation she gave herself made her moan around his member, unknowingly stimulating him further. Soon enough, they reached their climax, Hinata drinking Naruto's essence with joy. Finally letting go of Naruto's shaft, Hinata breathlessly got back to her feet, her legs shaking a bit, and a bright smile on her face. She was happy. Her crush had finally shown affection to her and she had been able to pleasure him. What she didn't know was that her heaving and still chest was far too enticing for Naruto. Pressing himself against her and kissing her with blazing passion, Naruto pinned her against the wall with his body, placing his manhood just under her folds. Without giving her time to understand what was happening, he began to thrust, his throbbing member pressing against her folds, the tips sometimes brushing against her butt, causing her to scream out in pleasure and surprise, only muffled by his kiss. Their previous activities had made them very sensitive, and it wasn't long before they went over the edge again. Breaking the kiss to allow them to catch their breath, Naruto stayed where he was, pressed against Hinata. Looking in her eyes, he kissed her again, this time softly. Count yourself lucky there was this exam, he told her with a blazing smile. Otherwise I'd have slammed you right against this wall. Hinata suddenly looked irked and muttered something about ing exams, causing Naruto to laugh lightly and kiss her again. They quickly put their clothes back on and went for the roof. Hinata, who had been slightly afraid Naruto would want her only for the physical activity, was reassured. He had been wonderful with her, so it must mean that he wanted more than just with her, right? When they reached the roof, Naruto laid down and patted the concrete next to him, prompting Hinata to lay down next to him and cuddle his side and allowing Naruto to slip his hand in her pants and grope one of her buttocks. "Say Naruto-kun," said the Hyuga heiress. "Why didn't you do that kind of things before? Before, we were civilians, meaning that if I had any immoral behavior, no matter how dumb the notion is, it would have been brought before civilian jurisdiction, but now we are genin, thus we fall under the unofficial rule that says that ninja can do nearly everything they want as long as it doesn't threaten village security. We're supposed to kill people. Weird UAL fetish is quite small compared to that. If I wanted, I could go down there and you in front of everyone, and there would be no legal consequences. No, Hina-chan, I won't do it, not today at least." The Hyuga pouted a bit, but the fact Naruto hadn't said they couldn't do it later somewhat reduced her frustration. Besides, she was too happy to be pissed right now. They enjoyed silence for a few more minutes, until Naruto was the one to break it. "Hina-chan, there's something important we gotta talk about." Hinata looked up, surprised by Naruto's serious voice. He sounded unusually serious, and it worried her. "Well, I recently learned that I have a clan, and that I'll have to rebuild it. The thing is, I'll have to have several girls," he said, becoming more and more nervous as he talked. Hinata lay there, taking in what he said, and trying to see why he was so worried. Then she understood. He was afraid she would be angry at him and reject him. That showed he really cared about her. A warm and loving smile made its way to her face, reassuring Naruto. Then, she realized what it implied and a shocked and happy smile replaced the former. Are you asking me to help you rebuild your clan?" she asked excitedly. Naruto nodded. I'd like that." Hinata almost accepted on the spot, but she thought back and tried to see how she could use that to her advantage. Quickly thinking of something, she licked her lips sensually, unknowingly making Naruto curious and slightly excited. "Alright, but I have 3 conditions." "Which are?" asked Naruto. "First, you don't share me. I don't care if you share the other girls, but I'm for you only." Naruto nodded eagerly. He could absolutely go with that. He had always been a bit possessive of Hinata anyway. "Second, I want to be the top wife. Honestly, I is considering making you my only wife, the others would be more like concubines." Hinata rewarded him for that with a deep and very passionate kiss. Now she knew he would accept, and she would become the Uzumaki matriarch soon enough, because there was no way, that Naruto would refuse her last condition. "Alright, last condition. I want to play with the others as I please." A trickle of blood fell from Naruto's nose. Girl-on-girl action. In my harem, with my wife. How is that possible? Asked Naruto in complete disbelief. He thought he'd have to get her there progressively, not that she'd jump into it willingly and gleefully. Hinata smiled impishly. She was happy that she had surprised Naruto, and especially enjoyed the part where he already considered her his wife. "Love, I'm a Hyuga, everyone in my clan is Byaul. In fact, I could be considered one of the mildest Hyuga around since I'm not into some really gross fetish, like bestiality. Don't worry, I'm not sharing you with any animal, you're mine and mine alone," said Naruto, causing Hinata to purr happily. "Say Naru-kun," said Hinata flirtily. "How about tonight we celebrate your passing, First you could tell me how you passed around dinner and then we could celebrate, just the two of us, in your room. Naruto, at this point, was smiling like he was the luckiest guy on earth. And that's when Hinata murmured into his ear. You can even use the back door. She's getting it hard tonight. With clones. Hinata exited the academy with a smile on her face and a spring in her steps. Naruto had said that he would remain on the roof and step in at the most opportune moment. Hinata felt beyond happy. Her beloved Naruto loved her back. She was as good as married to him already. She'd have some girls to play with when Naruto wouldn't be there and he'd make her his woman in just a few hours. She happily walked toward her classmates who were gathering near the academy training ground for the beginning of the test. She absent-mindedly noticed her buddies the nails and their reactions. Kiba was quite enthusiastically scooting away from her, but Sasuke, the Uchiha heir, had never seen this before, a female his age that denied him. It was new, surprising, intriguing and enticing. Am I the only one thinking he's creepy? She was obviously strong and, for reasons he couldn't fathom, thought of him as unworthy of her. He would prove his might in this test. He walked toward the Hyuga heiress with confident strides, and stopped right in front of her, proudly looking in her eyes. You are strong, yet you feel I am not worthy of you. I do not know why, but I will prove my strength to you. He said with a smirk. The idea of dominating a strong female appealed to him. It would be another show of his strength. Hinata's face had descended into a blank expression, and it irked him. On an impulse, he went forward, intent on forcibly kissing the girl. With the parents, who were there to watch their progeny's performance, Hiashi was just about to run in and bitch slap the brat into oblivion, when it happened. Hinata danced around the Uchiha, grabbing the back of his head and taking advantage of him being off balance to slam him into the ground, face first, hard. Then, her cheery smile returning, Hinata hopped lightly onto the back of Sasuke's head, driving it further into the dirt, and began walking away, enjoying thoroughly the few steps she took on the Uchiha's back. Hiashi almost burst in pride at the display. Feeling a friendly slap on his back, he turned to face widely grinning Sume. Hiashi, I like your pup, she's got spunk. Yes, she does. I will gladly admit that I'm very proud of her right now. For standing for herself, of course. The fact that she just walked on Fugaku Tem's son has nothing to do with it. Shikaku snorted amusedly. Sure Hiashi, sure. Hinata sat against a tree and watched the show unfold. First would be a taijutsu tournament, and she was curious to see who she would be up against. Then, she noticed a pink-haired girl running toward the group with barely wiped bloodstains under her nose. She came to a skidding halt just in front of Iruka and screeched. Iruka-sensei. Naruto is in the academy and he stole a headband. And he was doing nasty things to Hinata. Everyone turned to Hinata in surprise. Many were ready to dismiss the words of the pinkett. After all, the shy heiress would never do this kind of things. All it would take would be a denial. Even half-hearted and meek. Even Sasuke had gotten his head out of the ground to see the inevitable denial. But to their shock, Hinata simply raised her right hand to her face and licked sensually her middle and pointer fingers. Immediately, Sasuke was in her face, enraged. Why that failure? He's just a talentless, perverted, worthless orphan. What does he have that I, the heir of the Uchiha, does not? Hinata grabbed his neck yet again and shoved his face in the ground again. Hiashi failed to keep his smile in check. On the roof, an annoyed Naruto saw that Pinky had ruined his occasion to make a grand entrance, and decided to salvage what he could. Walking to the center of the roof, he breathed deeply, then ran toward the edge. With a mighty jump, he flew off the roof. The sudden appearance of a shadow on the ground caused many to look up just as he unfurled the scroll holding his armor while rolling in midair. Sending chakra into the scroll, the modified storage seal hummed to life as a blanket of smoke covered him. Using this cover, he quickly rolled the scroll and stashed it into his pouch before beginning his descent. Completing his roll, he placed himself upright again and began to fall at high speed toward the ground. Slamming feet first into the dirt of the training ground, he cratered slightly the earth and picked up a cloud of dust, obscuring the view of all present and barely showing his form rising from a crouch to a standing position. As the cloud of dust settled, he was revealed in all of his melodramatic glory. He wore suit of armor reminiscent of those of samurai, with large flat pauldrons bearing the insignia of his clan, a wide chest plate, plated gauntlets and shin guards, along with a traditional helmet, the crest of Whirlpool emblazoned on the front. Where, on normal armor, flaps of plates would fall on the back, sides and front from the chest piece, in this one a single piece of cloth flowed from under the chest piece, encircling him completely, falling to his knees and hiding his thighs. The plates were burnt orange and the cloth black as night, but what enhanced his impressive appearance was the mempo covering his face. The armored face mask was fashioned to resemble the face of a snarling fox, leaving only his startling blue eyes visible. Tied as a belt around his waist, his headband stood out proudly, lone piece of silvery metal in an ocean of black and dark orange. Behind his back, the handle of a tachi could be seen on his left, and a cape, a burning tapestry of orange and black, flowed in the wind behind him, depicting a burning castle under a starless night. He took 5 steps forward, each fall of his foot thundering in the deafening silence. In a deep and powerful voice, he talked. Silence floated on the training ground. Iruka stood there, eyes wide in disbelief. The Hokage's jaw had gone slack, his pipe almost falling from his mouth. The clan heads were looking on, impressed by the entrance. The civilians were beginning to panic, thinking that the demon had taken over. Sasuke had gotten his head out of the ground to look at the dobe. In disbelief, his fangirls were looking in shock at the armored blonde who had just humiliated Sasuke in a contest of coolness, and Hinata had to restrain herself from glomping him and dragging him in the woods to, you get my point. Naruto then raised his left hand, showing that a strange gem was mounted in it. It was gray at first, but when his fist was raised high enough, it glowed red and some kind of horn sounded, and from the woods, brown creatures emerged, converging on Naruto with raucous enthusiasm. While one or two would have looked amusing with their rabbit pelts, the dried blood on their weapons dismissed any feeling of mirth at their sight. There were 20 of them, with kunai in their hands, and many had strange armors, seemingly made of chitin, an impression further reinforced by the helmets a few of them wore, apparently made of an abnormally big spider's head. Like Inuzuka hound-sized spider. Many girls gave a shudder of disgust and the Aburame present began to shake visibly. Even more gruesome, one of them had what seemed to be a human scalp on his head. Sasuke then gathered his wits, stood up and planted himself before Naruto. If Hinata was attracted to the dobe, then he would destroy him, show his dominance. If she couldn't be his, she didn't deserve to be happy. Fight me, he ordered with a snarl. An indignant scream came from the tree line. How dare you? The owner of the voice revealed himself to be Gnarl as he walked into the training ground. No one orders the overlord. It has been so since the Rakudo bestowed the title and its privileges upon his daughter. I see that Tanro's progeny is very much like him, arrogant beyond measure. The minion master snarled in hatred, before turning to Naruto. Master, I advise to remove this cancer from the face of the earth. The Uchiha have only caused grief and sorrow to your ancestors, from the very first day. No Gnarl, as enjoyable as it would be, it would cause too many problem. I will humble him myself. I expect a full explanation about that Tanro character. Most certainly my lord, said Gnarl, bowing humbly before his master. Naruto walked toward the circular fighting ring that sat in the middle of the training ground, Sasuke following behind with a smirk. They took their position, Iruka uncertainly giving a start to the fight. Immediately, Sasuke darted forward, slamming his fist straight into Naruto's mempo. He could not see that under the lacquer laid metal and not wood. Had he known that, he wouldn't have bruised his hand so much. With a grunt, Sasuke jumped back, looking at his bruised knuckles, not understanding what had happened. With a grunt of anger, Sasuke dived forward again, intent on striking the unmoving blonde down. He only managed to hurt his fists, pounding against the thick metal plating. Then, Naruto finally accepted to retaliate, and did so with an incredibly fast strike of his right fist, straight in Sasuke's jaw, sending him flying out of the ring. Everyone, including himself, seemed surprised. Naruto brought his hand before his eyes, flexing his fingers. Interesting. All Uzumaki armors are laden with seals, my lord, said Gnarl, both to allow maximum mobility and to increase the strength and speed of the wearer. Sasuke snarled, getting back up. Get out of that armor, Dobi, and fight like a man. Why would I? Am I not a ninja? As such, the only honor code I am bound to is that of loyalty. Loyalty to the village, to my comrades, and to my clan. Fairness in a fight is not required. Sasuke gritted his teeth, and prepared to charge in again, but Iruka stopped him. Sasuke has been thrown out of the ring, and thus has lost the match. Winner, Uzumaki Naruto. A cream blur crossed the training ground and settled itself in Naruto's arms, a purring Hyuga looking straight in her boyfriend's eyes. And when were you going to tell me about your little imps? Asked Hinata with a raised eyebrow. With a chuckle, Naruto drew her closer and used his somewhat freed hands to remove the mempo. Actually, I was supposed to tell you before this whole mess, but we kind of got sidetracked, so. It's okay, said Hinata. Her voice then gained a seductive note to it. You'll just have to make it up to me. Naruto smiled brightly, and pervertedly. I love my life. Master, asked Gnarl. Is this one your first mistress? Wheel, I still gotta ask permission to Hiyashi-sama. You have my blessing, said a popcorn-eating Hiyashi. Oh, awesome. Thanks Hiyashi-sama. Well, that's taken care of. We're officially engaged, Hina-chan. Hinata was almost bursting in joy. She sent a grateful look to her father, the man answering with a double thumbs up, with his popcorn bucket mysteriously flying in the air. Sasuke just couldn't believe it. What? Why? He is completely perverted. He is bound to be unfaithful. Why chose him? What does he have that I don't? Asked a completely jealous Sasuke. Hinata decided to humor him and answered. First, he's not a cold like you. Second, he has given me plenty of happiness since I met him. Third, we share quite a lot of interests. As for unfaithfulness, that won't be a problem since I'll play with the girls too, said Hinata, causing a good number of males to nosebleed. And on a side note, he's big and you're tiny, concluded Hinata with a smirk. Kiba got up, and planted himself in front of Naruto. The blonde prepared himself to knock some sense in Kiba, but the Inuzuka fell to his knees, hands joined in a prayer and eyes shining. Please master, teach me your ways. Teach me to be a pervert and still get several willing girls. A massive sweat drop ensued. Sorry Kiba, but that's kind of a family tradition, so I don't think I can help you with it. Kiba began to tear up before wailing. Why must polygamy be a keke genke? The sweat dropped. The test had finally come to an end. It had taken most of morning and a good deal of the afternoon. Hinata was classified as scout skirmisher and Naruto as tank frontline fighter. Naruto took another scroll out of a pouch on his left hip and unfurled it around him, being covered once again by a blanket of smoke. When it cleared, He was wearing a silk burnt orange kimono making him look regal. Of course, Hinata blushed while ogling him shamelessly. Quite a few girls in the class also blushed and began cursing themselves for not paying less attention to his jacket. Naruto picked Hinata up bridal style, causing the girl to smile delightedly, when Hiashi approached the two. Daughter, Naruto-san, if you would please come with me, I believe we have much to discuss, said Hiashi in a calm yet warm tone. Naruto shrugged and followed the clan head through the streets, Hinata still in his arms. He had sent Gnarl and the minions back to the castle. They quickly reached the Hyuga compound and went, surprisingly, to Hinata's room. Now, we should pack your belongings, Hinata. I think it would be better if you moved in with Naruto, it would prove simpler for you. Really? I can move in with Naru-kun. Yes, though I expect you to come back to the compound to continue your training in Juken. Now there is also something I must give you. Hiashi fished in his pocket and took out a small piece of red plastic with leather straps. Father, is that? Yes, it is the ball gag with which I proposed to your mother. I know she would have wanted you to have it, said Hiashi, looking fondly at the toy that had muffled so many of his beloved Hitomi's pleasured screams. Hinata took the little thing reverently, overcome with emotions. Naruto s his arm around her waist and pulled her to him, looking lovingly into her eyes. If you want, we can use it tonight. Hinata smiled. I'd like that. Hiashi nodded approvingly. You have chosen a fine one, Hinata, a fine one indeed. You are welcome in our family, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto and Hinata had just teleported to the castle thanks to the gate near the Hokage Tower. Hinata looked around, amazed at the size of the halls. She looked at the tower heart in wonderment, caressing the iridescent sphere with the tip of her fingers. It is beautiful. The tower heart, the source of many powers. For instance, it powers the tower gate we just took. Come on, let's go eat. Naruto grabbed her hand and led her to the dining room, neither disturbed by the silence that permeated these damaged halls. It's not in the best of states. No, but it will be rebuilt, and the banner of Whirlpool will once again stand proud on these walls. Whirlpool. Wait, you're the heir of a nation too. Yup. Handsome, strong, loving, as perverted as you, and a prince to top it off. Jackpot, my little Hina, jackpot. They reached the dining hall to see a table with many types of food arrayed, including an Uzumaki-sized bowl of ramen. Gnarl was standing in a corner. Master, since you had a guest, I took the liberty to send some brown to hunt some animals and had them prepared. I also had some delicacies your ancestors stocked unsealed and prepared. Excellent, Gnarl. Now why don't you tell us about that Tanro fellow while we eat? Certainly, Lord, said Gnarl as Naruto and Hinata sat down with the latter in the first lap. Tanro of the Battle Fan was the oldest of the Rakudo's children, and fathered the Uchiha clan. That little brat was arrogant and forceful, always giving orders to everyone as if they should follow him just because he said so. The only one he respected was his father, even his own siblings he saw with contempt. Truly a most unpleasant person. Gnarl rubbed his chin. Then was Sanzo of the Thousand Hands, founder of the Senju line. He won his nickname through his speed, for none could rival him in taijutsu. He was slightly better than his brother. He at least left Lady Nemu alone when she said she wanted no part in their stupid squabbles, but he had just as big an ego and he thought that he was the one supposed to rule. The wrinkled face of Gnarl then lit up in a fond smile. Ah, and lastly there was little Lady Nemu. She became known as Nemu of the Whirling Tide because of her incredible control of water, but to us, minions, she was the little lady. Her brothers were fighting so hard for their father's approval that they never paid us any mind, always looking to one-up each other. But Nemu, she would often come to play with us. When she came with us, The red created fireworks, the blue swam with her, the green actually washed up and played tag with her, and the brown would try their hardest to make her laugh with their tricks. She was such a sweet child. When she grew up, she kept coming to us, she was fond of us. She would listen to my stories as I told her of our battles next to her father, how we took down the mighty Jubi, how we defeated the bandit kingdom of Chishio Blood no Kuni, and many other tales I have now forgotten in my old age. A tired sigh escaped his lips. The battle against the Jubi she liked the most. Tens of thousands of minions fought in this battle, with the Rakudo at our head. I wish you could have witnessed it, the glory of the first overlord, master of life and death, the Rakudo Sennin. The browns pinned the beast to the ground, the greens weakened it, the red bombarded it constantly, all that fell were brought back by the blue. It was a cataclysmic battle, and one I will always remember. I was there, fighting next to the overlord, the firstborn of the minions. When the beast was finally defeated, Rakudo-sama sealed its chakra inside of himself, trapping the soul and power of the beast in his own. Then, around the dried husk of the beast, he gathered rocks and stones and propelled it into the night sky, creating the moon. Gnarl looked at his audience and smirked. They had stopped eating, listening intently to his story. The day of the Rakudo's death was a sad one indeed. He called for his 3 children, and told them of his coming demise. For the first time, the 3 siblings agreed totally, and wept together. He told them of his plan to avoid the rebirth of the Jubi. He would split the beast in 9 creatures, the Biju. You mean, said Hinata, like Kyubi. Indeed, young lady, indeed. Little Kurama was one of them. Wait, the Kyubi has a name. Yes, he has. Hinata, figuring now was as good a moment to tell what she knew as any other, turned to Naruto. Speaking of which, I know about the seal. Naruto paled. Seriously, Naru-kun, if the fox bothered me, do you really think I'd have let you do all those things to me? That relaxed Naruto a great deal. Anyway, said Gnarl. After this, he chose Sanzo as his successor. Tanro threw a temper tantrum and began whining about how he should be the one to lead, yada yada, all the while Lady Nemu was busy trying to keep the peace her father had created, but it proved impossible with her 2 retarded siblings going at each other's throat. Though, I have some respect for Sanzo, he defended Nemu when Tanro tried to force her to fight for him. Then, he tried to get us to fight for him, but we had been instructed to only follow Lady Nemu. In his rage, he began slaughtering the minions, and that is when Lady Nemu stepped in. You could attack her, she would only defend herself, and because of this she was believed to be weak. But when Tanro began to kill the minions she cherished so much, she went to her brother and defeated him in a display of power truly impressive. She then took the hives and surviving minions and left for a peaceful place away from the 2 morons. She settled with some followers in Whirlpool and there founded the glorious clan whose legacy you bear, my lord. Finished Gnarl with a flourish. Hinata looked at Naruto with wide eyes, and then turned to Gnarl. Let me get this straight. My fiancé Kami-sama, I love saying that, is not only heir to a clan and a nation but also a direct descendant of the Rakudo Sennin. He is. Wow. Just. Wow. Now tell me, young lady, your eyes seem to tell me that you are a Hyuga, am I correct? Yes, I am a Hyuga, for now at least. Gnarl raised an eyebrow, and Hinata smiled dreamily. Once I'm married to my Naru-kun, I'll be an Uzumaki. Said Hinata with a happy sigh. My lord, said Gnarl, I like her already, she will be a fine mistress. And she is proof that not all of Tanro was bad. Tanro had many sons, those that believed in offense and followed the way of their father formed the Uchiha, but one believed in defense and sought to twist his eyes to give him a wider range and a better way to protect his life. In time, that man's progeny formed the Hyuga and, much to my pleasure, harbored a deep hatred of the Uchiha. The Uzumaki didn't have much contact with the Hyuga, but the few times the two clans met were cordial, well except that one time that degenerated into an orgy, but that is beyond the point. A sly smile made its way to Hinata's lips. Naru-kun, are up for reenacting that fine encounter later tonight? Most certainly. Master, shall I have a command gauntlet and an armor prepared for Mistress Hinata? Yup. Now Hina-chan, let's dig in, we'll need all the energy. Said Naruto, wiggling his eyebrows. A bright smile came to her lips and she nodded. They then attacked the food with gutso, enjoying feeding each other. Naruto lazily opened his eyes, looking around the room, trying to understand why he felt so good and relaxed. Then, he focused on the mass of blue hair on his chest. A smile came to his face. For a first time, it was memorable. Hinata had been extremely eager, and while the first round had been classic, with lots of kissing and only one of him, the next rounds had been far more inventive. He grinned naughtily when he remembered the look of excitement and lust on Hinata's face when he had summoned a shadow clone. His left hand, resting on her waist, climbed up, feeling the still developing but exciting curves along the way, and settled on her. He then began to fondle the mound, eliciting soft moans from her. Then, he moved his free hand across his chest and slowly caressed her stomach, slowly going lower, before reaching her flower and sliding 2 fingers into it, causing a louder moan to escape her and her eyes to flutter open. Hinata woke up to the pleasurable feeling of her lover's fingers pumping in her. When she realized whose fingers it was, she happily dismissed the concept that last night had been a dream, and abandoned herself to Naruto's ministration, moaning happily. Naruto then lowered his face onto the lonely and began ing on it enthusiastically, Hinata's hands flying to his neck to pull him deeper into her chest. I love your way too. Ooh, to wake me up, love. Ooh yes, right there. A few more minutes of playing around, and Hinata jumped over the edge with a scream. Naruto propped himself on his arm to contemplate his handiwork, finding the way Hinata's chest heaved to be particularly delicious and enticing. He couldn't resist for long and quickly attacked the downed Hyuga, inserting himself in her in one smooth thrust. Hinata, feeling the more than welcome invasion, moaned gleefully before capturing his lips in a soul-searing kiss. Perverted she may be, her heart was no less honest in her love. Naruto immediately set a fast pace, thrusting into his lover with passion, loving the way Hinata arched into him, her back leaving the mattress to allow her chest to press into his. Grabbing her hips with his right hand, he slipped his left under her back to keep her close to him as he thrust always deeper into the recently deflowered young woman. Soon, he felt her quiver against him and her smooth walls massaging his manhood so deliciously he couldn't help but explode in her. Softly, he laid her down on the mattress, both panting but with satisfied and happy smiles on their faces. Hinata finally reopened her eyes and looked into his with love. Pulling him into another kiss, she reveled in the feeling of his body against her, proof that her feelings were returned. Sure, that was great, but knowing he loved her made it even better. Breaking the kiss, she glanced at the window and estimated the time to be around 8:30. We should go eat breakfast. Yeah, and then I can show you around your new house, said Naruto enthusiastically. Getting up, he offered his hand to her, helping her up, only to have her wince and rub her butt soothingly. Ow, Hina-chan, you alright? Yes, I'm just sore as hell. A perverted smile blossomed on her face. But it was worth it. Do you have a hot spring? That would do wonders for my muscles. Sure, love. Naruto picked her up bridal style and, being himself, took the occasion to grab her and, firm. He purred happily. Hinata brought her mouth to his ear. You can enjoy it some more once in the spring. Naruto, still but, darted toward the spring and reached it in record time. It took them some time to get out of the spring since they had trouble cleaning up without getting dirty again, but in the end they managed, and Hinata even managed to relax her muscles. Wearing only towels, they returned to their room and dressed quickly before going for breakfast. They ate together, Hinata sitting happily in his lap. Once breakfast was over, Naruto led Hinata to the armory, stopping in a room with several suits of armor and weapon racks. Giblet. Giblet. Come here, Giblet. Hinata looked in amusement as a brown minion wearing scraps of metal and dragging a hammer came from the back of the workshop. Master. What can Giblet do? New weapon. New armor. Hina-chan here needs some armor and a weapon. Yes, master. Come, mistress. Lady Armor here. Giblet began skipping to one side of the room, still dragging his hammer. He then pointed to a section with armors fit for her 15-years-old frame. Here. Here. Armor for the mistress. Hinata made a beeline for a dark purple armor. Naruto looked at the armor and then gave his opinion. I approve. Good protection and it keeps others' eyes away from what only I can see. Hinata then grabbed the armor and began stepping toward the back to change, but another idea came to her. Giblet, could you go in the back please? Giblet looked at Naruto, and the intrigued blonde nodded. The brown then happily skipped back to his workshop, dragging his hammer with him. Once he was out of the room, Hinata smiled slyly, and began a striptease. Once she had stripped to her underwear, she then put the armor on before looking over at Naruto again. The poor blonde had a massive tent in his pants and seemed to be a bit too warm in his kimono. You naughty little vixen. Did you really need to torture me this much? Hinata answered with a saucy grin. Don't worry, love, you can punish me for this tonight. Oh, I will. Now that he was actually paying attention to the armor she wore and wasn't thinking of the way her pants had slid over her butt, Naruto could see it was indeed a good choice. The chest plate rose at the level of her chest without a crevice between her s. She had large pauldrons like his with the Uzumaki crest on them. She also had the plated shin guards and forearm protectors along with the cloth falling from her chest piece, except the cloth here was parted on the front, allowing for greater mobility, something she would need. While Naruto had gloves that completely covered his hands and fingers, she only had a piece of cloth expanding from her sleeve and linked to a ring around her middle finger. She also decided to forego any helmet. Okay. Now a weapon. Naruto took her to the wall where the many weapon racks were and let her choose. Immediately, she chose a bow, picking it up along with the quiver. That should do nicely. That way I'll be efficient both at close and long range. Good. Now you're fully equipped. Of course you'll have to train a heck lot to be able to proficiently use your weapon. Now that we got you a suit of armor, let's get you outfitted with a kimono. No need to remove the armor, I'll give you a scroll that will seal it as it is. The scroll will allow you to switch outfits at will. How many outfits are stashed in one scroll? Only one, but when you change your outfit, the one you wore is automatically sealed. Here, take this scroll, unroll it around yourself and push chakra in this part of the seal. Hinata did just as told, but, well, there wasn't any outfit in the scroll. So she ended up stark. She turned an amused gaze to her fiancé, Kami-sama. Did it felt good? You wanted this to happen, didn't you? Absolutely, said Naruto, grinning pervertedly, his eyes roaming over her body. To his surprise and delight, Hinata turned and placed her hands on the armor display on which the armor she had chosen had been resting, and began to swing her hips seductively. I'm getting cold, said Hinata, despite the warm and pleasant temperature. Could you warm me up? Naruto walked up to her, his hands falling to her hips. She shivered in anticipation as he slowly massaged her sides. One of his hands moved to her lower back, before sliding down her butt, across her lower cheek and hip and coming to rest on her wanting flower. He rubbed her a bit, loving the way she moaned. His other hand left her hips and untied his obi before pushing his pants and underwear down, letting his shaft spring unrestrained and fall on the crevice of her while he inserted 2 fingers in her, causing her to moan loudly. Rubbing his manhood between her cheeks, he enjoyed the way she softly humped his hand for a few more moments before sheathing himself completely in her in one swift thrust. At the surprising, but hardly unwelcomed intrusion, Hinata moaned loudly, enjoying the sensation thoroughly. They had spent quite a bit of time last night making sure she was comfortable with him in that hole. She was glad to see it paid so soon. Naruto began to her to their shared delight, and Hinata quickly realized that her sneaky fiancé, just thinking of that almost made her cum, had placed his hand there for a reason. With each of his thrust, he pushed her into his hand, increasing her pleasure as it went in and out of her, leaving her constantly stimulated. Naruto began to pick up his pace, forcing more moans out of her and bringing her closer to ecstasy, until she peaked and, with one last but loud moan, released. Standing there, panting and leaning on an armor stand, enjoying the skin contact. Anything else for today, love? Or can we go back to the bed and enjoy the day? Purred Hinata seductively. I'd like that, my beloved, but we still have to get you a kimono. Oh, okay, said Hinata, a bit disappointed. She picked up the clothes she had discarded to put the armor suite on, and put them on, without her underwear since they were in the scroll. They made their way to the room where the kimono were stocked. Naruto had been there once, to pick up several of his dark orange silk kimono. Hinata had never been a very fashionable person. She left that to Ino and the other fangirls, but when she saw the assortment of kimono that were at her disposal, she almost squealed. Darting from one kimono to the next, she looked at them all excitedly. It's incredible. And they're all silk. Oh, this one looks good. Or maybe this one. Gah, I don't know what to choose. Why not take several? Really? Asked Hinata excitedly after suddenly reappearing next to him. Naruto chuckled and kissed her softly. Anything for my girl. Now come on, choose some. Hinata smiled, and went to pick those she wanted. She took 5 loose kimono for everyday work. They were a rich dark purple with a slightly lighter obi, with the lower part more ample and concealing pants, thus allowing more freedom of movement and ensuring she would remain decent even if they were torn. Then, she picked more formal kimono for great occasions. She picked a white kimono with red falling leaves and a red one with white flower designs. She was so excited to try them on that she almost ripped apart her old pants and jacket, once again giving Naruto a pleasant view, as she quickly changed in one of her purple kimono. Looking at herself, she felt satisfied. Now I just have to add the Hyuga crest on one shoulder and the Uzumaki on the other and it will be perfect. Don't worry, it may seem strange but Stench loves to embroider. It's good too, he needs a hobby besides stabbing. Maybe you should find one for Giblet too, he looks like he only works. Oh, that because he does, but don't worry, since there's a lot of bashing he's happy. Those minions are strange creatures. Yup, but useful. Now come on, I'll show you around the place. They made their way to the entry hall only to see that the construction team was hard at work, singing badly, as they worked with stupid enthusiasm. They also saw a few minions bringing fresh timber to help the repair. They spotted Gnarl as he approached them. Ah, master. Good news. An old seal created by your ancestors is still intact. I couldn't be sure, but it reacted last night. During physical activities it gathers vital energy spent, and depending on one's elemental alignment, the type of energy varies. We now have a small stock of water energy and wind energy that helped start back the creation of a wind hive. Wind hive? Yes, with the evolution of chakra and those elemental affinities, New forms of vital energies appeared, so we used vital energy to create new hives. The water, or blue hive, red or fire hive, and the brown or earth hive already existed, and we managed to create a lightning or yellow hive. Sadly, it was taken as well. I also believe that some minions that scattered may have gathered in tribes and built minor hives, so it might be good to look out for them. I strongly believes that those minor hives have unique variations that will help improve our minions in the long run. Okay, that's good to know. Now, we need to know who got the water affinity and who got the wind. That is not a problem, Lord. Your ancestors created a scroll for this. I will set some minions to look for it. Okay, cool. Now come on, Hina-chan, let's show you around. Naruto took her hand in his and led her outside, showing her his possessions and further impressing the young woman. He also showed her the room where the vital energy was stocked, and was quite pleased to see that it was slightly more filled. There were 6 platforms on the ground, with their twins attached to the ceiling above them, and in between, the life force was stocked. The water column was glowing slightly, with a small ball of blue light hovering at mid-height. The poison column was still barely visible, the wind column was empty, but now that he paid attention he could see that what he thought was rubble behind it had slightly grown. The fire and lightning columns were empty, and a minuscule glow was present in the earth column. Hinata looked at the growing hive for a second, before smiling pervertedly. Well, love, I guess it is our duty to help this hive grow as fast as possible, don't you think? Most certainly, my sweet Hinata. And we shall strive towards this goal, with passion and regularity. I want to make it grow every night. Oh, we will. But we shouldn't stop once it's grown, we need the life force for the wind minions. Yes, hissed Hinata, her eyes closed as she imagined the fun they would have together. She was already hot and bothered, she couldn't take it anymore. Naruto, are we finished? I can't wait to help this hive grow again, she said, looking lustfully at him, sending shivers down his spine. With a hungry look of his own, he pulled her closer. Let's take this to our room, love, we have much to work on. Naruto and Hinata were peacefully walking through the streets of Konoha, with Hinata clinging to Naruto's arm, partly because she loved to do that, thus showing she was his, and partly because she still had a bit of trouble walking correctly after last night. They had worked hard to help build the wind hive, and though the progress wasn't that important, it was an excellent start. People were sending them surprised looks, not understanding why the Hyuga were allowing one of their heiresses to be seen with this notorious pervert, but they didn't give them any trouble. Finally, the pervy couple reached the academy and made their way to their old classroom. When they entered, everyone looked at them, especially Sasuke and Sakura. Said Pinkett, having failed to claim the seat next to Sasuke, had to settle for the one just behind, giving her a small vantage point to observe the two. And what she saw made her gasp. You've done it. You've done it with Naruto. Just how much of a whore are you? Hinata snapped. Letting go of Naruto, she jumped, unfurled her armor scroll, summoned her equipment, still hidden by the smoke, took out her bow, and fired 8 arrows in quick succession, drawing Sakura's shape on the wood behind her, before landing in a crouch on Sasuke's head, pushing it into the desk, her bow drawn, an arrow poised at Sakura's throat, a deathly glare directed at the fangirl. A whore sleeps with any man. If you dare to suggest even one more time that I am unfaithful to my Naruto-kun, I will make you suffer for months on end, before killing you slowly and painfully. Am I clear? She growled out, hatred blazing in her eyes. Sakura nodded weakly, terrified for her life, and having soiled herself. Hinata then backflipped, pushing Sasuke's face deeper in his desk, unfurled the scroll and returned into her lavender kimono, landing right next to Naruto, and snaking her arm around his once again. Wow, that was awesome. exclaimed the blonde. Hinata blushed prettily at the praise and a smile formed on her face. They went to sit in the back of the class and waited calmly for Iruka to arrive. Meanwhile, Sasuke was getting his head out of his desk, and he looked, was that a beard made of splinters? Oh jolly. Iruka arrived finally and looked over the class. He noted Sasuke, being harassed by fangirls trying to remove the splinters, but the overenthusiastic girls and the struggle for the privilege to remove said pieces of wood ended up driving them further into the youth's skin. Then he saw Sakura, just above Sasuke, paralyzed, with arrows all around her, Kiba stealing glances at her and sniggering every so often, and lastly Hinata happily cuddling with Naruto in the back row. Being a professional, he had to settle his class, so he cleared his throat and ordered everyone to return to their places, and when the fangirls accused Hinata of attacking Sasuke, dodged the matter artistically by saying it wasn't under his jurisdiction anymore, and that they'd have to bring it to the Hokage. He then gave a speech about how proud of them he was and all that before announcing the teams. Neither Naruto nor Hinata paid attention until they heard Naruto's name coming up first. Team 7 will be Uzumaki Naruto, Uchiha Sasuke and Haruno Sakura. A thump followed, as the face-planted Naruto groaned in despair. Why sensei? Why? Why do you hate me so? Sorry Naruto, it's tradition. Team 8 will be Inuzuka Kiba, Aburame Shino and Hyuga Hinata. Kiba rose from his seat and looked straight at the brunette. Let's make a deal, I don't hit on you and you don't nail me. Deal. Deal. Though, it doesn't extend to Sasuke. Alright, I correct, I don't hit on you, you don't nail me, and you nail Sasuke to your heart's content. Now that's a deal I like, said Hinata with a smile. Kiba sat back down with the feeling he had done well and avoided much future suffering, well, for himself. Since he didn't care about Sasuke, there was no problem for him. Iruka sighed, and resumed, quickly passing over the last two teams, then he told them that their teachers would come soon to take them. As soon as he finished his sentence, the door slid open, and in stepped a red-eyed woman with curly hair and a very original dress that caused Naruto to whimper in fear. Hinata, surprised, looked at her fiancé. Naru-kun, hush. If she finds me she will torture me. Hinata looked at the woman that had taken care of her for a few years now, and found her glaring Naruto down. Kurenai-sensei, may I know why you are trying to kill my fiancé with your eyes? Kurenai looked at Hinata with wide eyes. What do you mean fiancé? You're barely 15, and this boy is a notorious pervert. I love him as he is, said Hinata with a dreamy smile, snuggling up to Naruto some more. He is bound to cheat on you. At that, Naruto slammed his fist on his desk, fracturing it. Hinata, having jumped in surprise, had let go of his arm, thus allowing him to stand. The blonde had an expression of contained fury on his face, but his eyes told the truth of his feelings. It was quite clear he wanted to rip this woman apart. Are you insinuating that I would go behind Hina-chan's back? Hissed Naruto lowly. Choose your next words carefully, John and Yuhi, otherwise what happened to Suzume-sensei will be a walk in the park compared to what I'll do to you. Said prude had viciously humiliated Naruto during a lesson. The next day she had been found, in front of the Hokage tower, tied to a post, a free sign above her, and high on aphrodisiac. No one but her knew how many men had used her during the night. Never again had she crossed the Uzumaki. And now, Kurenai was sweating bullets and trying to avoid her problem. Hinata, having some affection for the woman, decided to save her. Don't worry sensei, Naru-kun and I already have an agreement. We'll pick our little concubines together, since we'll both play with them. Kurenai's eyes grew to an almost impossible size. Most of the girls in the class had outraged expressions, a few had small nosebleeds, and the whole male population of the class, Sasuke included, had nosebleeds. Plus a very perverted and happy smile for Naruto. So, which team are you here for, sensei? Asked Hinata innocently. Yes. Sai Team 8, with me. Kurenai then led her 3 students out of the class. Other teachers came and retrieved their teams, until only Team 7 remained. Naruto, bored, pulled out an Ika and began reading his book peacefully, giggling perversely on a few occasions. Finally, Sakura, needing something to pass time, decided that she could berate her blonde teammate. Naruto, shut up. I'm tired of hearing your stupid giggling. Sakura, you don't understand art. This book is a masterpiece, really. It's just a perverted and shitty book. You should be ashamed of yourself. But I guess a low-life like you reads something at their level. Said Sakura cruelly, and had she paid attention, she would have gone all fangirl on the fact she had caused Sasuke to smirk. Naruto didn't give a damn. Maybe I should show you how good this book is. Yeah. The blonde cleared his throat and breathed deeply. Daisuke and Miki stood in front of the tent, looking upon the ruins of the burning village, the village Yusei had destroyed. I am sorry, Miki-chan, said Daisuke. If I had killed him when I had the chance, your family would still be alive. I am sorry. No, Daikun, it's not your fault. Yusei is the one to blame. We gave him all we had, we shared everything with him, but he wanted power more than friendship. Said Miki lowly, her voice still strained by the hours she had spent crying. We must take him down, before he kills more. Daisuke wrapped an arm around Miki comfortingly as the young woman laid her head on his shoulder. Fresh tears flowed out of her eyes as she remembered happier times, when the 3 of them played together in the fields, innocent children dreaming of evil foes they would fend off. Never had they imagined that one of them would become the foe. After an hour, they put their memories to rest and went inside the tent to rest. Daisuke couldn't find sleep, plagued as he was by painful memories and dark thoughts, so he went outside, to gaze upon the stars. Suddenly, he felt 2 arms snake around him and a very womanly chest, clad only in a bra, being pressed against his back, causing him to stiffen. Miki rested her chin on his shoulder, rubbing her cheek against his. Are you okay, Daikun? She asked quietly. I can't sleep, answered Daisuke, trying to fight down his arousal. Me neither, said Miki, apparently unaware of Daisuke's plight. You know, Daikun, there's something that I really have to tell you. She said, blushing lightly. Of course, Miki-chan, said Daisuke, trying desperately to ignore the pleasurable feeling of his long-time love against his back. Why, you know, I'll always listen to what you have to say. Daisuke felt his beloved smile, and his heart soared, proud that, even after this horrible day, he still managed to make her smile. She may not love him, at least he could bring some light in even her darkest day. Miki kissed his cheek softly before nuzzling his neck. That's something I always loved with you. You always care about what I have to say, you never dismiss me. That's why I'm sorry I can't seem to let it out. She murmured, blushing a little more. Hey, no worries, said Daisuke with a grin, turning to her. Remember when we were kids and we wanted to tell secrets? You can do just like we did, draw the secret on my hand. Miki smiled softly, her eyes shining with an emotion he didn't recognize. I have a better idea, she said, leaning closer. Let me show you. Her lips met his in a sweet kiss. Daisuke was shocked, but he answered the kiss nonetheless, if only through instinct, and once he overcame his shock, he reveled in the feel of her beautiful lips against his. Slowly, he turned his body, wrapping an arm around her waist, pulling her closer, delving deeper in the feeling of shared love. He had had dozens of lovers, convinced that he would never be able to call Miki his and to be hers, but here he was, kissing the one woman he honestly loved, feeling her love being poured into the kiss. He felt elated as the kiss ended, gazing with adoration into the eyes of the woman he loved. Slowly, he kissed her lips, before placing a kiss on her jawline, then another, slowly making his way to her neck, ing lightly on her skin as her hands traveled his skin, caressing his hardened muscles. Hesitantly, he placed his free hand on her shoulder, caressing the milky skin exposed to him while slowly, almost timidly, pushing the strap of her bra aside. She let out a shuddering breath, pulling his face against her neck and sending a hand to unclasp her bra, wanting to expose his flesh to the wonderful ministration of her beloved, and soon, nothing could stop Daisuke from gazing in wonderment at her luscious and ample che. Shut up, you pervert. Hush, you idiot. That last sentence had been said harshly by a gray-haired male sitting at the desk just in front of Naruto's and wearing the Konoha uniform, a face mask and his headband over one of his eyes. Then, he turned back to Naruto, stars in his only visible eye, his head resting on his palms, and he almost purred. Please, don't mind me, go on. In the Hokage office, one old man and his 3 helpers, all with stars in their eyes, and pulling a very good cat face, said at the same time. Yes, please. Naruto smiled. It would be with pleasure, but sadly a part of the audience is susceptible to ruin the reading. Say, how about we go to the Hokage's office after this team meeting and after I pick up my girl, of course, and then we can resume the reading. That way, the old man won't have to waste chakra on his crystal ball. Said Naruto. A second later, everyone could swear they heard a muffled, damn it, how did he know? Resonate in the classroom, causing Naruto to snicker. Kakashi looked a bit down, but the prospect of the reading remotivated him quickly. All right, onto the roof. 3 new Kakashi puffed into existence and grabbed his students, causing them to go a bit dizzy due to the sudden transition from the classroom to the roof. Quickly, the 3 Kakashi clones sat them down, and Kakashi, visibly eager, took his position in front of them. Alright, let's go with the introduction. My name is Hitaki Kakashi, Jonin of Konoha. My likes are my friends, the Ika Ika series, and currently Blondie because of his masterful narration of one of the most beautiful moments of Ika Ika Burnt Soil. My dislikes currently include Pinky due to her very rude interruption of said masterful narration. My hobbies are reading and finding new ways to aggravate my self-proclaimed rival, Meta Guy. As for my dreams for the future, well, I'm currently waiting impatiently for this marvelous reading you promised. Said Kakashi with an eye smile to Naruto. Now, I'll keep the best for the end, so you first, bubblegum woman. Sakura, with a visible tick mark on her forehead, began talking. My name is Haruno Sakura. I deeply dislike perverts, Naruto, and Ino Pig. My likes are, she looked at Sasuke, blushed and smiled. My hobbies are, once again, she looked at Sasuke, smiled a bit wider, and blushed a much deeper shade of red. As for my doctor, okay, I get it. Interrupted Kakashi. You're a fangirl, and you want to get in his pants. Next, Broody. HN. Grunted and irritated Sasuke. I am Uchiha Sasuke. I dislike a lot of things and I don't like much. I only have one ambition, to restore my clan after killing a certain man. Said the Uchiha in a dark voice. Uhu. Very nice, Mr. Flowers and Rainbows. And now, on to you, divine reader. Said Kakashi, some fondness and clear admiration in his voice. And for the first time in the meeting, he looked genuinely interested. Naruto, seeing he had an attentive audience, smiled. I am Uzumaki Naruto, heir of the Uzumaki clan, Prince of Whirlpool, and Overlord. Currently a genin, but that will be subject to change soon enough. My likes are, in order of importance, Hinata-chan, ramen, Ika, my clan, my minions, and all that is perverted. I dislike any and all anti-perverts, those hypocritical idiots, and those that try to ruin my fun. My hobbies are reading Ika, if possible with Hinata-chan, perving, mostly on Hinata-chan, and groping Y girls. My dreams for the future are to constitute myself a harem to help rebuild the Uzumaki clan, with my Hina-chan as the matriarch, finishing rebuilding my castle, and meeting Jiraiya of the Sannin. Kakashi nodded. I have a question. Two actually. First, why do you say anti-perverts are hypocrites? Simple. They deny their deeper impulses. They come up with scenarios, all more depraved than the previous one, and pretend to be revolted by them, but they think them up, and it excites them, they just refuse to acknowledge it. So, they're hypocrites. Kakashi nodded in understanding. Alright. Second question, why Jiraiya-sama? Naruto looked at Kakashi blankly for a second. He wrote the books. That's enough of a reason. Kakashi I smiled. I happen to know him a bit, you know. I can introduce you to him at his next visit in town. Thanks, sensei, said Naruto with a cheery smile. I can't wait. If you're done, grunted Sasuke. Huh, oh, yeah, that. Anyway, meet me at Training Ground 3 tomorrow at 6. There'll be a test. If you fail, you go back to the academy. Don't be late, and I'd advise against eating a breakfast, you'd puke. Now off you go, you two. Naruto and I have a very important place to be, said Kakashi with a shooing motion. Then, he grabbed Naruto's shoulder and teleported to the Hokage's office via Shunshin. Sadly, the reading would have to wait. Good, you're both here. Sadly, the council heard of Naruto's little stunt and has been pestering me for it to be brought up. We'll have to go there, but we need Gnarl too. Hopefully it will be able to explain some things to these idiots. Okay. Could we also get Hina-chan? I'd like to have her with me. Sarutobi nodded and sent an Anbu collect the young Hyuga before the group made their way to the portal. Naruto quickly went to the castle and collected Gnarl, before returning to Konoha. When he arrived, he saw that Hinata was there too, a mildly worried expression on her face. As they made their way back to the Hokage Tower and to the council room, Naruto kept her hand in his in an effort to reassure her. Finally, they reached the room and went inside. The shinobi side looked overall impassive, clearly they didn't want to be there. The civilian side on the other hand was scowling and glaring at Naruto. Sarutobi made his way to his side, and began talking. Alright, what is this all about? Hokage-sama, I do not think Lady Hyuga has clearance for what this meeting is about, said a civilian. If you mean to talk about the fox, I already know. And if even one of you dares to call my man a demon, I'll rip off your balls or tits and force feed them to you. Is that clear? Said Hinata in a dangerously low voice. Hiyashi's popcorn bucket had mysteriously reappeared, and many clan heads were asking for some as they looked at the sweating civilians with sadistic smiles. Oh, of course, Lady Hyuga, said a very nervous pink-haired woman. It is just that we have to establish whether or not these things Naruto-san summoned are clan secrets, so it would be safer if. Not a problem. Naruto-kun is my fiancé, so I'm entitled to be there. Interrupted Hinata with a smug smirk. Silence reigned in the room for a moment. Then, in a collective thump, the jaws of all the civilians hit the table, quickly followed by the sound of a dozen or so camera taking a shitload of pictures. By the time the civilians had regained their composure, the shinobi had put away their camera and were discussing what they could do with this blackmail material. Hiruzen, chuckling, decided to get a hold of the situation. Alright, enough with that. What did you want to discuss exactly? Well, Hokage-sama, said the pink-haired woman, finally getting a hold of herself. We need to determine whether these creatures are a danger to the village and if they really are Uzumaki property. We are, said Gnarl with finality in his voice. It has been so since the Rakudo bestowed us upon his daughter, progenitor of the Uzumaki. As for being a threat to your village, we only follow the orders of the Overlord. As long as you don't attack our Lord, we will not be a threat to you. Well, except if our Lord wants us to, of course. And how resilient are those little imps? Asked a heavily bandaged man. Immediately, Naruto was wary of this man, for where he stood was a hole in the perv. This man was not to be trusted. I am afraid that is part of the clan's secrets, said Naruto curtly, a frown on his face. For a few moments, the two of them stared each other down. Danzo frowned. He did not appreciate the boy's behavior, far from it. Boy, the village needs an accurate assessment of its forces, and that includes the fighting capability of every ninja. We need to know what they can do. Report. Now, said Danzo a bit forcefully, intent on intimidating Naruto. Hiruzen was about to put his old teammate in his place, but Naruto suddenly smiled widely. You are very much right, Elder Sama. As such, I will give a complete report to Hokage Sama in private, away from prying eyes and ears. After all, the minions may very well become Konoha's trump card. It would be most regrettable if gossips about their capabilities destroyed any advantage they could give us, do you think not? As such, I think it would be much safer if only myself and Hokage Sama knew the extent of their abilities for now. Most true, intervened Sarutobi, thoroughly amused at the way his old rival had been told off by the perverted teen. A quick look towards Hiashi would have shown the impassive head of the Hyuga clan eating popcorn, impassively, from a gigantic bucket, with 3D glasses on. He seemed to be enjoying the show. Reluctantly, Danzo conceded the point. Gnarl-san, said the pink-haired woman. May we know how you chose your master? Well, we pick the most worthy of the Uzumaki line and request that he or she become overlord. Should that person refuse, then we will pick another candidate. Though, we have some standards, some people are excluded due to shameful behavior or unacceptable acts. Shameful behavior, like peeping on women and groping young girls? Asked a civilian, visibly excited. How is that shameful? The overlord needs mistresses, the way he picks them is his to choose. Then, how do you define a shameful behavior? Insisted the pink-haired woman. By now her intentions were quite clear and it displeased Naruto greatly. Well, a shameful behavior would be insulting his ancestors, rejecting the most important Uzumaki traditions, dishonoring the clan or turning against it altogether. Dishonoring the clan? How? Asked the very interested pink-haired woman. Naruto could do nothing but grit his teeth or risk to appear as if he wanted to hide something, but this woman was beginning to irk him to no end. There were several ways, for instance, rape was considered a capital crime. Said Gnarl, completely missing the vicious smirks that appeared on many civilian faces, and the subsequent revolted faces on the shinobi side. Thankfully, the Tower Heart is designed to reject any rapist, so that is not something we have to worry about. Immediately, the civilians' faces fell and the shinobi smirked, with Hiashi having a cup of soda in hand, and no indication on where it came from. Of course, prisoners of war are excluded. Specified Gnarl. Anything else? Asked the pink-haired woman, with badly disguised irritation. Well, intolerance to ramen was always seen badly in the Uzumaki clan. The pink-haired woman slammed her head in the table, and Naruto grinned widely. Wait, you mean eating large quantities of ramen are also part of the job? Yes, my lord. Is there even a downside to this job? Moving on, what would happen if you ran out of Uzumaki to choose as leader? Asked the irritated woman. We would eradicate those that killed off our masters or died trying, and if we succeeded we would probably choose another line from the Rakudo's blood to serve. But that won't happen. Lord Naruto is our overlord and I am confident that he will live a long life and reform the Uzumaki clan. And what if a more worthy clan arose? Asked one of the civilians bluntly. Without delay, the whole shinobi side of the council erupted in protest, Hiashi throwing his popcorn and soda to the side, causing them to disappear in a puff of smoke. How dare you! Bellowed an enraged Choza. Clan property is untouchable. If you bastards think I'll give my clan's secrets to your Uchiha bitch, 'cause you think he's better, you're dead wrong. Growled Sume. You have no say on the worthiness of any clan or to who their secrets should go. Declared Hiashi in a cold voice, amidst the protests of the other clan heads. Of course, seeing such a united front pleased Naruto greatly, mainly because it pissed the civilians off. That won't happen, said Gnarl, earning the attention of the whole room. We were given to the Uzumaki line by Rakudo-sama. No line can be more worthy than the one chosen by the first overlord. If that wasn't enough, the Uzumaki have proven in the last 2 millennia that they are indeed a very worthy line, far worthier than any Uchiha or Senju could hope to be, no matter how much they would want to. That enraged the civilians. Are you saying that the Uzumaki are better than the 2 clans that founded this village? Yes. At least they didn't ruin the Rakudo's work before spending 2,000 years in a wasteful and idiotic squabbling. Had their progenitors used their brains, the world would still be at peace. Though, I will admit that young Hashirama was a very nice boy, almost like an Uzumaki. Though, it was a shame that he didn't eat ramen. What? Why are you bringing the Shodai in this? Asked the pink-haired woman confused. Because he married Mito-sama of course. Answered Gnarl like it was obvious. She was the overlady at the time, but when she married young Hashirama she relinquished the title. Oh, she was also your grand-grand-aunt my lord. Once again, jaws hit the table, though this time it was the whole council, Hokage included. What? Shrieked the pink-haired woman, further cementing the theory that she was related to Sakura. You mean this shameless pervert is related to the Shadaime Hokage? That is what I said. A few civilians fainted, the others were in denial. The Shinobi Council was looking at this in shock and Hiashi was looking at his soon-to-be son-in-law with wide eyes. Then, something dawned on Naruto. By the way, if it was a meeting to determine whether or not the minions were my rightful property, isn't it ninja matter only? Why are the civilians here? Silence fell on the room. And suddenly, the civilians felt very ill at ease. Maniacal laughter rose from the Hokage as the old man got up, an evil glint in his eyes. Naruto, my boy, go in my office and wait for me, I'll take care of this. Said the Hokage in a frighteningly sadistic voice. Not one to contradict an old man with such a scary voice, Naruto hightailed it out of the council room, Hinata in his arms and Kakashi just behind. Quickly, the 3 of them reached Sarutobi's office, and inside found the cage's 3 aides, all male of course, waiting in the room with stars in their eyes. As soon as Naruto entered, they appeared before him, on their knees, bowing to him. O divine reader, we welcome you in this humble office and thank you for gracing our unworthy ears with your celestial reading skills. Hinata looked at Naruto questioningly. Mind explaining Naru-kun? Wheel, I may have read Ika Ika burnt soil out loud while waiting for Sensei to show up, and the old man may have been spying with his crystal ball with these 3 probably present in the room. By now, the 3 helpers were looking at Hinata in fear and apprehension, afraid that she would pummel Naruto for his perviness before turning onto them. Hinata gave her man a stern gaze. Love, whether you like it or not, I'm playing Mickey. She said, stunning the 4 adults. Naruto only smiled. I wouldn't have it any other way, love. The Hokage then entered the room, a huge satisfied smile on his face. and what seemed to be small red dots on his robes.